Can you promote me to panelist, please?
Nice.
It's okay, family. Check one, check.
سامي فيني اعمل تست مع الاميره؟
Yes, يلا. I'm passing her on.
اوكي طب انا حاحكي على الميكروفون.
يلا.
مرحبا. بس بدنا نعمل تست على زوم مع سمو الاميره، حضرتك معنا؟
أكيد، إيه، أهلا وسهلا.
اوكي سامعينك بشكل جيد. ممكن بس تفتحي الكاميرا لحتى كمان نعمل تست على الصوره؟
إيه أكيد.
تمام كتير منيح.
ممتاز.
لكن نحن جاهزين هلا. إذا ممكن تعملي ميوت لحتى نبدأ الجلسة بعد دقائق. شكرا.
Keep it here. I can keep it where? Here. Okay.
No, probably, you know, I'm on the global center for the patient.
Yeah.
In the Netherlands.
At Mankil, right? That's the Mankil.
No, Rotterdam.
Rotterdam.
Thank you, Moon, the chair of the board.
Mm,
So we are
nice.
the only adaptation international organization.
Hi. It might not work. Is it working now? I think so.
It's
Okay.
working now?
Rolling to the volume. You test yours?
Can you test yours?
Is yours working?
Hi.
Test.
Yes.
I don't hear myself.
Okay.
Test. Can I give you 4 mic? Like? Yes.
So, Tanner?
Test.
I can see you there. Sort of.
Yes.
Thank you. Shukran. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the session. If you'd like to kindly have a seat, and we will start. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be with you here today. I'm from IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, and our mandate is to promote renewable energy in our member states. We have 169 member states. It really is a pleasure to be here today to focus on the Arab region as far as SDG 7 is concerned. So the discussion today right now is on SDG 7 on energy. Energy obviously is deeply embedded in our socioeconomic structures, and it links to the wider efforts of all other SDGs. I'm not going to put it at the center because it seems each SDG feels like it's at the center of the others, but energy, water, etc., food systems are definitely important for sustainable objectives. We have an annual report on SDG 7. IRENA is one of the co-custodians with other institutions. And I have to say that while we've made some progress as far as renewable energy penetration and energy efficiency improvement and access is concerned, we are lagging far behind on all of them. and same for the Arab region. I think as UNESCO has done a beautiful job in looking at the progress for all SDGs, so I'm not going to go into that. Suffice it to say that whether it's for renewable energy penetration, still lagging behind most regions, and same thing with energy efficiency, also some improvement, but there's a lot more that can be done. And energy transitions, and as a result of that, the realization of SDG 7 is an important catalyst, an important socioeconomic catalyst for diversification of the economy. And this includes sustainable industrialization. We can tap in the vast potential of renewables in our region in order for countries to develop, deepen, strengthen, whether national or regional supply chains. I think it's a great opportunity to diversify over the economy overall, but the energy sector in particular. And this can obviously have some benefits from a societal point of view as far as jobs are concerned, and creation of local value in general. Obviously important, and that's what we'll be discussing today as well, is financing. I mean, we know there's significant money in capital markets, but we also cannot forget the importance of public investment, public finance in enabling the kind of environment required for the promotion of SDG 7. And at the same time, we have a tight fiscal space. Countries have a tight fiscal space, and we need to see how to best direct public investment, basically, to promote SDG 7. And in particular, I'd like to just mention the importance of addressing the limits of the current international financial architecture, which continues to benefit a minority at the expense of a majority in the world. And maybe you will take me on that later on. In our session, we will look at selected country experiences and the impact of the different crises in the region on the progress or lack thereof made for SDG 7. We will discuss some of the promising experiences in terms of policies, actions, finance, etc., to accelerate the progress on SDG 7. My final point is going to be about trying to challenge ourselves in this discussion to move beyond the dominant paradigm, the prevailing paradigm that leaves us to sort of tinker within the narrow confines of the status quo. The root causes for many of the challenges we're facing today and the lack of progress that we have in SDGs in general, but also in SDG 7, we've been facing them for many decades. So we need to think to have a different kind of thinking, one that questions the dominant growth paradigm and the related international economic order we have been entrenched in for several decades, and that ultimately has led us to the current situation we're today and to the issues that we're facing globally. So we need solutions that look at the environment or those issues from a comprehensive point of view, and that address systemic issues. This quick fixing that we're having, whether it's in the energy sector or other sectors, will not lead us to maximize benefit and have a just and inclusive transition as far as energy is concerned, at least. So the main point is that we need to mobilize the political will and some of more inclusive partnerships in order to move towards sustainable development. I've been working in the development space for many decades, and I feel that the success of energy transitions, especially if we want it to be just, is not a simple question of technology, of finance, and of policy. It's ultimately about the political will I was speaking about, which should prioritize systemic issues and in tandem address environmental, social, and economic challenges. So this is for my introduction. I'm really very honored today to have four distinguished panelists. We will have Her Highness Princess Noura bint Turki Al Saud, partner and co-founder of Aeon Strategy, a sustainable development advisory firm, and Her Highness is joining us virtually today. We have Mr. Jamal Sahir, who is Professor of Practice at the Institute for the Study of International Development at McGill University. Mr. Ramzi Abu Said, Managing Director at ASACO General Trade and Contracting, a firm specializing in appliance, electrical and electronics manufacturing. That's the industrial policies that we need in the Arab world. Mr. Mustafa Suleiman Abdul Hadi, who is Professor and Dean of the Environmental and Natural Resources College at Wadi al-Shat University. Thank you for joining us today. And I will start with Her Highness Princess Turki Al Saud. And you know, the announcement of Saudi Arabia in terms of its intention to achieve net zero by 2060 was a big surprise and very welcomed by the world. But I think one of the questions that we were all asking ourselves is how an oil-based economy can make that move and achieve the goal. What is the kind of technology and policy roadmap that you have defined in order to succeed, and what kind of challenges you perceive?
Thank you very much, Rabia. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak. And it's unfortunate that I wasn't able to attend in person, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to do so. So just to go back to your question and your point on Saudi's net zero targets, we all know that Saudi is the largest exporter of liquids in the world. More importantly, we have the third largest company globally in terms of market valuation, second only after Apple and Microsoft, and maybe with a market cap of, I would say, more over three times the second largest energy company in the world. And I think this just goes back to the history of the kingdom and its commitment to the sector, its commitment to the energy sector, and its reliability and its leadership role in that field. When people think Saudi Arabia, they really think as an oil and gas producer, and it seems like it just happened. It just seemed to pop up, and we happen to be the biggest producer. But what people fail to appreciate is the time commitment. It is the sincerity, the investment, the consistent planning, ongoing planning of this sector that allowed the kingdom to reach this might and this level of sophistication when it comes to engineering and its capacity in the energy sector. And it's because of that the kingdom has committed to net zero targets, not because someone asked us to do so or because there's international pressure. It's because of the realization of the importance of the energy and climate sector that go hand in hand with one another. You cannot solve the climate issue without addressing the energy crisis and the energy transition and energy access. And we cannot solve the climate crisis without looking at a way of sustaining energy demands, energy supplies in a way that is affordable and clean at the same time. And it is with that realization that the kingdom has recommitted itself to the energy sector first and foremost, and made a new commitment to become a leader in the environmental sector, leading the pace for the energy transition and the global climate commitments. And I think this all became possible starting in 2016 with the Vision 2030. Vision 2030 really created the blueprint for a nation that is diversifying its economy, introducing new areas of economic activity while maintaining its might in existing activities, promoting that, but also crowding in new areas of economic development and new sectors of economic development. So it's not an either or. When we see this transition, when we see our economic development path and future, we look at a future that is really comprehensive, that is really integrated, that really values all of the endowments that we have when it comes to our youthful population, when it comes to our engineering capacities, when it comes to our very educated population. We are capitalizing on all of these gifts that we have and that God has bestowed upon us in order to really develop in the way that benefits us as a nation and the globe more generally. And I think once that was established as a vision, as a blueprint for the country, then it allowed for more sophisticated planning when it comes to the energy sector and climate and environmental initiatives. And that's when we had two major milestones. One was a circular carbon economy, which transformed into the national program, which really looks at a holistic and comprehensive approach to managing emissions. It is, if the circular economy can tackle 45% of climate issues and climate challenges, the circular carbon economy can take that and take it up to 90 and over 90%. I would even go up to 99%. And so it just highlights the powerful nature of the circular carbon economy framework, which values all technologies, and it doesn't pit one technologies over the other, but it allows the kingdom to really capitalize on energy efficiency technologies and enhancing energy efficiency to deploy renewable capacities in the kingdom. Currently, our targets are to become 50%, to generate 50% of our electricity from renewable energy by 2035. We already have about over 10 gigawatts in purchasing power agreements that have already been signed. The other 50% will be from natural gas. And I might add to this that just very recently there was an announcement that there will not be any new combined cycle power generation powered by natural gas without CCUS. So carbon capture is a core component of such technologies and that just illustrates the kingdom's commitment and accountability to its targets and to its announcements globally. So that's one thing. It also values, of course, other forms of carbon management, whether it's direct air capture, point source capture, the deployment of hydrogen, it's all its forms. And I think we can all agree that I think it's about standardization right now, and it's about putting the right frameworks and right structures to ensuring hydrogen and other technologies are really have the integrity that's necessary for them to be scaled up to the level that we all wish to see it. And to really sequester the amount of carbon that is necessary. So the circular carbon economy, again, in a nutshell, looks at, it highlights the 4 R's, which is reduce, reuse, recycle, and reuse. And these really are the core pillars of the circular carbon. And with that, it really enabled the kingdom to really take a comprehensive approach where all players within the ecosystem are able to contribute, are able to play a role in that, not only the energy sector, but also the waste management sector. The kingdom had, we have now committed to about over 80% of land waste management. At the moment, we have zero, almost negligible, I would say, waste management technologies when it comes to circularity. By 2035, we're estimating
on this, Your Highness. I mean, these are great projects, and I think the vision is amazing, and you do have a roadmap in terms of technology and policies. But very briefly, any challenges that you perceive in this trajectory towards 2030 and then 2060?
There are challenges that we all face. I don't think nothing comes without its challenges, right? There are technological challenges, there are scaling technology challenges, and there are financing technologies. But I think what the kingdom can do and has done is that, one, it does have the fiscal space to operate and take action. It does have the fiscal space to start with pilot projects, to cooperate with international partners on proof of concept. And also it has the long-term vision and commitment of its leaders. This cannot be understated because first and foremost, our leadership really has that commitment, and it has that sincerity in terms of holding itself accountable to the targets that it puts and to the vision that it has for this nation. Absolutely. And I think that is the most important aspect.
That's absolutely great. I'm going to cut you here because I think the fiscal space is really important in this case. And I'm going to come back to you a bit later, but Mr. Jamal Saghir, the fiscal space, some countries have the means of the energy transitions, others don't. So we were expecting from Copenhagen lots of money nobody ever saw on the table. And then we were promised lots of international financial force from SDG 7. And we haven't seen much of that. So from your experience, what do you think, how do we advance this energy transition in developing countries? I mean, we can't say it's been very efficient until now, so the turn is yours.
Your Excellency, Madam Chair, many thanks for this important question. Let me focus a bit on the region, then I will come back on the global question. Our region demand of energy in our region is expected to double by 2030, with electricity demand at a great rate of 6% per year. Our region right now is responsible for around 9% of global emission. And emission at this current pace are expected to triple by 2060. So we need really now to capture the emission issue before it's too late. If we are going to be late, like the rest of the world, and we heard it yesterday from the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, then the challenges will be even tougher, multiple, and I'm not sure we'll be able to face them. The good news, as Her Excellency just said, countries in the region are starting moving to advance green investment, learning from the international experience, and moving towards sustainable investment to accelerate business growth. We're not doing it just for the sake of energy. We're doing it for business reason. If you look at some of the figures in the Arab region, green investment has quadrupled from around 4.5 billion in 2020 to around 20 billion as we talk right now. But we're still far away from doing a good job. So if you have to advance the SDG 7, in addition to increasing financial flow, which is crucial, and that's the lesson learned from Copenhagen, that we have not yet delivered on it, and in needing to leapfrogging technology, not only developing technology, leapfrogging technology in renewable energy, we need to decouple regional growth from energy consumption, which can be achieved by improving energy efficiency and energy use productivity. This is our key challenge in this region. And to do so, I have 4 messages for you. First, government need to improve new tools and framework to accelerate finance toward the green and sustainable growth. We have not these coming. There is a lot of talk from COP15 to COP6, all of them, all the COP that we have participated in, I've done a lot of them, a lot of talk, not enough done yet. I reviewed green financing in most of the region, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. It shows that traditional financing mechanisms are being used in one or the other, but we have not been innovative. And that's the biggest problem of this region. We have not been innovative in financing. Why? The financial system needs to be reoriented to meet the financing system and the financing demand. And therefore, we have to be much more open to transition, including guarantees, international climate finance, green bond, debt to environmental swap, and a green sukuk. The third message, which is very important, and this is for especially for the Gulf countries, we need to consider the role of the sovereign wealth fund because of their investment power, centrality to economic transformation, and the long-term economic value. The importance role of those sovereign funds is important in greening investment, and this is lagging in the region. We don't see them investing as they should be. When we compare the sovereign fund in the Arab region compared to what we see in the North, they have been done a better job actually in reorienting the sovereign fund toward green investment. So in my opinion, sovereign fund should provide transition finance, catalyze green investment by integrating national economic transition, clean energy, and climate change as key element of their long-term investment strategy. I know that Aramco is doing this in Saudi Arabia, but I'm not sure all the sovereign funds are doing this. 4 message. Debt to nature swap are important in this region because many countries who have huge debt can benefit from that instrument and moving toward much more smarter way of using the debt as a way to move to climate smart development. So debt swap for climate mitigation and adaptation projects are important. We've seen the beginning happening in Jordan. We've seen Egypt has done some. Tunisia need to do much more. These are countries that are ready for this kind of investment. So what I'm trying to say, we need to have much more innovative way of looking at finance, not only asking for ODA, not only asking for concessional funding, not only asking for grant. We have to use the existing mechanism and work on them in a much more innovative way and move beyond the project finance model that we have been using so far.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you. I'll get back to you about that. I'm not sure, innovative financial instruments are necessarily the solution when all the money that was promised in terms of financial flows towards developing countries was never put on the table. But maybe we can get back to in the second round on this. Yeah, okay. So we'll talk about it. I'd like to continue with this enabling environment. So we've seen, public fiscal space that is the means of basically investing in energy transitions that is possible in certain countries, others not. We've seen some innovative financing instruments that could maybe help the region in promoting sustainable energy development. But in this enabling environment, also the private sector needs, to have certain conditions set. And I'll go to you, Mr. Ramzi Abu Said, who is a private sector player, and to ask you how, basically, what are the enabling conditions that you need in order to promote your business in the region?
نعم. أنا راح أحكي بالعربي بس يمكن أدخل إنجليزي بوقت معين. ما في شك إنه القطاع الخاص له دور ريادي ومؤثر جدا في مساعدة بالانتقال إلى الطاقة البديلة، ولكن للأسف هو ما عنده الانيشيتيف، ما هو منه مبادر، هو فقط يجاوب، يعني answers الديماند اللي بيحطها المستهلك، فهو خاضع لقواعد السوق. بمعنى لازم يكون في ديماند لا يتحرك القطاع الخاص، والقطاع الخاص لا يتحرك ويكون في ديماند بالرينيوبل انرجي. اغلب وخاصه في دول المحيط، يعني القطاع الطاقه مسيطر عليه من قبل الدوله وليست اسواق مفتوحه. فاذا اي قرار بتاخده الدوله بيأثر يعني تاثير مباشر على القطاع الخاص وكيف بده يتجاوب. نحن شفنا كثير بالاخر 15 سنه كيف تحرك السوق باكثر من بلد عربي ومن ضمنها لبنان لاستعمالات الطاقه البديله. ولكن يبقى هناك دايلما انا برايي بانه المورد القانوني او التاريخي للطاقه بصير بده يجيب مضاربين عليه. يعني هذا المورد بالقطاع الخاص مضارب على يعني على شركات الكهرباء اللي هي مفروض تكون بتبيع الكهرباء وتبغى الربح. ففي دايلما من هالنوع. هلا مثل ما حكينا انه هيدا كله تابع لقواعد السوق، وقواعد السوق تيجي الديماند بيجي من شغلتين: اما حوافز incentives اللي بتعطيها الدولة لواحد يصير يطلب طاقات متجددة أو مصادر طاقة من الطاقة المتجددة، أو بيكون هناك حاجة. والحاجة مرات بتجي on a cold scale بسميه أنا، يعني باردة وحامة. للأسف بلبنان صارت عنا على الحامة، ورح أعطي مثل. بس خلينا نحكي عن الانسنتيفز بشكل عام. الانسنتيفز بتصير على طريقة انه يكون عندنا مثلا public bids مثل ما عم بيصير هلا بالسعوديه، او مثلا مثل ما بده يصير، مثل ما صار بالاردن بالسابق، مثل ما صار بمصر. هلا هذا شيء جيد لانه بتحفز القطاع الخاص، والقطاع الخاص بينظر لهالشيء كبزنس اوبورتونيتي قبل اي شيء ثاني. لكن هذا الببليك بيدز للرينيوبل انرجي برايي انا غير مستدامه، نوت سستينبل، لانه اولا بتخلص، وثانيا مفتوحه لكل لكل العالم. فبصفي العامل المحلي وسيط، بمعنى اكثر ما هو capacity building. يمكن كان يعني لازم ينظر لهالشيء كمان، انه يكون في مؤثر محلي اكثر تاثيرا، ليصير في استدامه ويصير في حركه بالسوق. طبعا كمان انا بشوف انه المحفز الثاني مثلا انه يعملوا فيدين تعرف مثل ما صار باوروبا. لكن هذا السكيم ما كان ناجح كثير، لانه حتى باوروبا بوسط الكونتراكتس، يعني مثلا بايطاليا كان بنص الكونتراكت يرجعوا يعملوا تشريعات يلغوا الكونتراكتس القديمه، لانه يحسوا انه الفيدين تعرف اما بالغوا بتقييمه، او يعني صار في تكنولوجيا تقدمت على التكنولوجيا القديمه. فمشوا بالعداد الصافي او النت ميترينج. هلا اغلب، يعني لانه بنرجع بنقول في تضارب مصالح بين المورد اللي هو عاده الدولي باغلب دولنا العربيه والمستهلك، لانه صار عم يضاربها يعني. صار في معوقات كثير بيروقراطيه. انا بعطي مثلا بلبنان كان في خارطه طريق بال 2010، وهونيك استحدثوا العداد الصافي لحديث 2019، لانه احنا بنحكي عن الفتره قبل الازمه، يعني لانه هيدي الفتره اللي في ايامها الواحد كان عدد محدود جدا من العدادات الصافي اللي ركبت، وهذا شيء يعني مخجل الحقيقه. بس انه اغلب الظن انه كان اللي بيعطي القرار اما مش مهتم، يعني اما بيظن انه هالشيء منه كتير مؤثر، مع انه يعني تبرهنت التجربه انه لو انه اتكلنا على الطاقه البديله بوقت اللي لازم كنا نتكل عليها، واللي بوقت اللي فينا ندفعها، كانت خلصتنا من هالازمه اللي نحن فيها. طبعا بنظري، وبعتقد هالشيء ما بحاجه كثير يعني لو واحد يكون يعني بروفيسور تيعرفها، واي واحد بيعرف انه له 40 45 مليار اللي هدرت، مثلا عم بحكي عن التجربه اللبنانيه انا، اللي هدرت بالطاقه وليترالي يعني حرفيا راحت مع الهواء، لانه ولعوها الناس، ولعتها الدوله او شركه الكهرباء وراحت مع الهواء. لو 10% او 5% او 10% هيدا استثمرت في الطاقه البديله، بعتقد كانت الازمه اسهل بكثير من هلا. فلهيك هالانسنتفز هيدي لازم تكون موجوده بشكل انه القطاع الخاص يتحرك ويكون سستينبل عليها. فهيدا من جهه الانسنتفز. نعم. في من جهه الحاجه مثلا بعطي المثل بالاردن، هيدا بيصير مثلا اذا كان سعر الطاقه غالي، فبصفي في حاجه انه واحد يعني القطاع الخاص او الطلب بيصير على انظمه الطاقه البديله لتوفير الطاقه. او هيدا الكولد بسميه كولد نيد، يعني اوكي واحد على مهله في يجرب في يعمل. والحقيقه انه الاردن ولبنان بلشوا تقريبا بنفس الوقت، ولكن الاردن هلا بالوقت الحاضر كثير منيح عامل، بس لدرجه انه ساتشوريتد، الماركت صار ساتشوريتد، فالقطاع الخاص عم يضمر، عم being suppressed، لانه ما عاد في كثير طلب، لسبب انه المنظم الكهرباء اعتبر انه خلص اخذ ما فيه الكفايه. فكمان هالشيء انعكاس سلبي على القطاع. يبقى هناك المثل اللي هو الطلب على الحامي هوت ديماند، وقت اللي بصادن اللي ما بيعود في شركه كهرباء تعطي كهرباء، وما بيعود في اي مورد اخر للرينيوبل انرجي، فبصير في فوضى عارمه بالقطاع. هلا the good news انه بصير في استهلاك رائع، نحن من جهتنا كبرايفت سيكتور كثير منيح، لانه بصير في شغل وبصير في ايكونومي سايكل ممتازه. لكن على المدى الطويل هيدا راح يكون يعني فوضوي بشكل لا يمكن، قد لا تستطيع المنظم.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think
You really gave very nice examples of the importance of stability of policies, and it's true, it's not just in the Arab world. We've seen in Spain, in Germany, sorry, and in other places, in Italy, as you said, you know, when the measures, incentive measures are suddenly removed, and sometimes retroactively in some of the countries, it's quite a problem for the private sector in particular. But I'll get back to you on the question that I have, especially in terms of demand and electricity prices increasing, etc., which is now a problem also in Europe and other places, but specifically in Lebanon. I wanted to ask you basically the same question about Libya and the enabling environment that is required in difficult or let's say conflict affected areas in terms of trying to move towards sustainable energy systems. What are some of the challenges and what are some of the incentives that you have in place?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. For Libya, I will try to speak in Arabic for the sake of flow of the dialogue. I should thank Mr. Rishti for the invitation, for inviting us to contribute to in this conference. Libya, try to give a brief about Libya as a country. It's very huge an area. It's about 1.7 million kilometer, which is كان ليبيا مساحتها حوالي 1,900,000 كيلومتر مربع. ليبيا منطقة صحراوية أغلبها يعني. كان فيها نظام كهربائي جيد، كان ضخمة شبكة كهربائية، وكانت المناطق المأهولة بالسكان في المناطق الجنوبية كانت مبعثرة، فبالتالي كان صعوبة توفير الكهرباء للجميع كانت صعبة، لكن مع ذلك كانت مغطية كل الدولة، وكان جهد 220 فولت للجميع. وكانت في مشاريع طموحة بالنسبة للطاقة النظيفة. كانت في محطات على طول الساحل حوالي 2000 كيلومتر في بعض الدواخل، لكن بعد 2011 الأزمة اللي صارت أصبحت البنية التحتية في ليبيا في وضع بصراحة لا يحسد عليه. كانت ليبيا شبه مش منغلقة، لكن ما كانش فيها القطاع الخاص متحرك فيها، وكانت الدولة متحملة مسؤولية كل البرامج الكهربائية والطاقة النظيفة، وكانت فيها برامج لإدخال الطاقة الشمسية في ليبيا. أعتقد كانت شركات ألمانية، لكن كان اعتبارات أمنية وسياسية انتقلت هذه المحطات للمغرب والجزائر. بعد الأزمة أصبحت ليبيا في وضع أن فيها انقطاعات كهرباء بالأيام، والليبيين ما كانوا متعودين على انقطاع الكهرباء، فبالتالي داروا محاولات. هي كانت فعلا فيها مساوي، لكن فيها الادفانتج بتاعها ان الشعب اصبح هو يبتكر باشياء لوحده باش انه هو يحل مشكلته، منها دخول الطاقه الشمسيه عن طريق المنظمات الدوليه، خاصه الامم المتحده لعبت دور صراحه في ادخال الطاقه الشمسيه، كانت نظيفه وكانت حلت مشاكل خاصه المناطق النائيه. يعني نحط بعض النقاط اللي هي الدوله او هذه الاشياء صارت مش لان تخطيط سابق من الدوله او من الشعب، لكن الشعوب لقت وضعها في وضع يجب حل مشكله. واحده منها اصبح في وعي من الناس الاستعمال الطاقه، استيراد المولدات الكهربائيه اللي هي فيها ديزل ملوثه للبيئه، فاصبحت تنظر الى اي اجراء لتوفير الطاقه بطريقه تكون ماشيه مع العالم. اعطت فرصه للقطاع الخاص تحرك في داخل ليبيا، سواء منظمات دوليه او محليه. فبالتالي منظمات المجتمع المدني بذلت مجهود توفير الطاقه لان الطاقه احنا غادي المياه عندنا جوفيه واعماق سحيقه اصبحت، فبالتالي الناس اللي كان ما فيش طاقه ما فيش كهرباء معناها ما فيش ميه، فهم اجبروا ان هم ضغط على الامم المتحده باستجلاب مضخات مائيه واستعمال الطاقه الشمسيه للحصول على المياه. فكانت واحده من الاشياء اللي ادفانتج. الشيء الاخر المجالس المحليه داخل المدن اصبحت تشتغل بنشاط، كانت قبل نشاطها محدود بناء على الوضع السياسي، كان اهداف سياسيه معيش لمصلحه الشعوب لان كان الدوله موفره كل شيء. لكن المجالس البلديه اصبحت فعاله على الارض، توفير المياه والغذاء واداء كل فاصبحت المجالس البلديه فعاله بفضل الازمه اللي صارت عدم وجود كهرباء. مؤسسه الكهرباء كانت فيها صراحه كوادر فنيه، وللاسف بعد الازمه الاغلبيه هاجرت، فاصبحوا بقيه العمال مجبرين على اصلاح الاعطال اللي تصير، خصوصا في الانفلات الامني اللي صاير والاستيلاء على معظم المعدات اللي هي موجوده داخل الكهرباء من النحاس بكميات كبيره. فالموظفين العاديين لقوا انفسهم لاستعمال طريقه طرح الاحمال، يعطي كل المدن على كل ليبيا في مساحه كبيره هذه، كل مدينه تاخذ حقها من الكهرباء ساعات محدده، فبالتالي اصبحت المساوئ على الكل والايجابيات على الكل يعني. ايضا الدوله فواتير الكهرباء لقيت وضع ان هي ما هيش في وضع تخلي الشعب تحت ضغط معين، وبالتالي ما فيش اجبار على دفع الرسوم الكهربائيه بشكل كما كانت. الشيء الاخر، الدوله بعد الازمه كان فيه وزير كان جدا فعال، لان ليبيا مساحه كبيره، هي 3 اقاليم، فخلى بدل ما تكون مركزيه الكهرباء حطها في اقاليم محدده، 3 اقاليم، كل اقليم عنده صلاحيات كامله استيراد المعدات وامرهم المالي خاص بهم، اصبح كل اقليم هو مسؤول عن ادارته، فبالتالي كل الموظفين داروا مجهود جبار في توفير الكهرباء للجميع. الشيء الاهم هذا كله الدوله كيف واجهته، المنظمات الدوليه خاصه UNDP وما ادراك اللي الامم المتحده صراحه ذات مجهود في استجلاب الطاقه الشمسيه للادارات الحكوميه، المستشفيات، المصانع، الاماكن الحكوميه اللي هي تخدم الشعب، ف هذا كان عامل ايجابي ما كانش موجود في ليبيا قبل. الشيء الاخر، كل التجار اللي كانوا هم يعني في استكشن على حركتهم في استجلاب سواء المولد الكهربائي او طاقه شمسيه، اصبحت فيه سوق رائجه على مستوى الدولي، وتعافت ليبيا من هذه الطرق. كانت مجهود شخصي ليبيا، مجهود ذاتي من داخل ليبيا ما كانش موجود اصلا، فكان في ادفانتج ان في مشكله في الكهرباء وفروها حل مشاكلهم. وصح كانت في مشكله عليهم ان الكهرباء اصبحت تنقطع 4 ايام و5 ايام، لكن بالمقابل قدروا ياخذوا انفسهم مع الوضع اللي صاير، حتى اصبحت الامور الان ستيبل، اصبحت اكثر هدوء يعني. شكرا.
Thank you so much. I guess the importance of civil society, personal initiatives, etc., in conflict-affected areas, it cannot be understated, overstated. I need to go back to Her Highness because she needs to leave in a few minutes, I think. So rather than continuing the discussion on the difficulty of introducing an enabling framework, I'm going to ask you, Your Highness, about the different stakeholders in Saudi Arabia or other experiences that you may be aware of. How do you get the buy-in of, I mean, you have civil society, you have industries, you have businesses, you have government. So how do you think you can reach the buy-in of all these different stakeholders, and what is the importance of partnerships? How do you view this in terms of just an inclusive transition?
Thank you very much. So I'd like to actually go back to the point on enabling frameworks and just spend a couple of minutes talking about that before going on to the stakeholder engagement. And I think there are critical issues or critical components that have to exist for a sustainable energy system, and more importantly, for sustainable development to exist within a country or a nation or a certain environment, right? And these are political stability, institutional capacity, and a good knowledge base, and the fiscal space. The moment one of these issues are broken, then you have the international community that steps in and supports in one way. Now, the problem is there is no global governance. and we have a broken financial system. And unfortunately, there are a lot of places around the world that lack this institutional capacity and knowledge base. And this is to the point of some of the panelists and the professor was mentioning here. So I think we need to really focus on this issue. And this is the biggest challenge, because as you said at the beginning, there is no lack of money. Financial markets are drowning in money, right? Capital markets have the funding, but it's these insecurities that are rampant all over the world. And this is what's limiting progress. This is what's limiting even cooperation, right? And this is even what's limiting the role of civil society in engaging in activities. And even if they do, they end up being ad hoc interventions, which are necessary because of some of the crises that are happening globally. But it limits the role of the private sector and it limits the role of civil society. All right, so I just wanted to comment on that, because I think this is a very important issue that should be, I think, discussed and looked in more carefully, especially when looking at solutions, because no country is alike. If someone comes and asks me, then we're always asked, what are the enabling policies or frameworks? How is the kingdom doing it? Well, this is how the kingdom is doing it. And I elaborated a bit in the beginning, and I could have gone on and on. There's so much, but again, what works for the kingdom does not work for any other country. And it's because we looked at our internal capacities and we figured out what can we do internally and how can we do things. What can we do internally without the support of our international partners? And then what is needed to accelerate our efforts through collaboration and our partnerships with the international community and our partners around the globe. And we've done that because first and foremost, we commit to ourselves, and that grants you the credibility, that grants you the trust, because you are showing before asking. We show that we are doing it, we show that commitment, and then we say, partners, this is what we are doing. Let's partner. Let's partner up on these technologies. Let's do. So this brings me back to the partnership issue. And partnerships happen on both the local, regional, and international scale. And when it comes to advancing technologies and innovation, the kingdom internally has worked. All stakeholders are working together. I mean, someone mentioned Aramco just here, but we also have the public investment funds who have all of these giga projects. These are all our national champions. We have the 5 big giga projects, all with very strong sustainability commitments, many of whom have at least 100% targets of renewable energy within their portfolio and within their strategies. And that in of itself is driving innovation. Just last week, I saw the biggest 1 megawatt hydrogen portable hydrogen fuel cell plant in NEOM, which is remarkable. It's the first of its kind. And this was really driven by innovation with the NEOM people working with their international partners. So this shows how public institutions, sovereign wealth funds can drive innovation, but it also requires the transparency, it also requires the commitment and the capabilities that come along with it. This is one example. And when you show these efforts, when you show such commitment and you start to show the people and the population, they get excited, they get interested, especially with the Saudi Green Initiative that was announced last year. It's really activated all parts of the society to contribute to the effort of not only achieving net zero, but really looking at a green future that values nature, that looks at nature as a source of wealth. It values culture, it values heritage, and it really gives the individual that feeling that they are part of the change and they really can contribute to this change. So we went from having civil society barely involved in the decision-making process or in the actions that are taken when it comes to green transition in general, because the Saudi Green Initiative is our green initiative, is our Green New Deal. And so we went from this private sector and from civil society playing a very minor role to them really taking the lead, because the public sector and the government entities put those foundations, they put the right infrastructure, they had this enabling framework that allowed people to contribute and become more and more involved in the sector.
Your Highness, thank you very much. I know you have to leave us very interesting perspective from Saudi Arabia, and I hope you'll have as little challenges as possible in getting to net zero by 2060. I'm going to stay with the idea of partnership.
Thank you. And maybe just to add quickly before I leave, if I may, the kingdom realizes that it can't do this alone, right? And it really needs its international partners, because no one can solve this challenge alone. And one of the biggest commitments is the Middle East Green Initiative that works with all of our partners around this region to really, when it comes, whether it comes to innovation, advancing innovation, creating centers that promote policies or technologies, whether it's green financing funds and schemes. We're really working with our partners because no one can do this alone. And really the Kingdom acknowledges that the success of the region means the success of the country, and the success of the country means the success of the region and the global world. And I'd like to thank you very much, take this opportunity to thank all the panelists, because I have to leave right now, and wish you all the best with the rest of the panel.
Thank you very much. And we wish you all the best in this journey. So in that journey, we're talking about ultimately infrastructure, right, for energy. And I'm going to go back to you, Mr. Jamal Saghir. You know, historically, infrastructure is really not paid by the private sector, right? Infrastructure has been historically, whether you take Europe or other countries, has been a public good paid by governments. And we're talking about major public infrastructure in the energy system. So first of all, I'd like to your reaction on that. Why is it that now energy infrastructure has to be paid by people, basically by the way we pay electricity in certain countries, or by the private sector, incentivizing the private sector? So that's one. So please reaction to that. And second, as a result of that, and because of tightening fiscal space, et cetera, we're expecting public-private partnerships to be more important in the field of energy system transformation, if you will. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, infrastructure I was director for infrastructure at the World Bank for over 10 years. And I've been struggling with this question for all my career at the World Bank, over 25 years. But to come back on specific question that you are asking, in reality, it doesn't matter public or private. It matters who can deliver the service at the lowest cost to the consumer. That's what people always forget. If the public sector can deliver the service at least cost, that's fine. If they cannot, if the private sector can do a better job on efficiency, that's also fine. The most difficult part of the PPP is the second P, the partnership. Whatever everybody think that it will work, most of the time it's very difficult to have those partnerships. And let me tell you what are the reasons holding PPP and private investors from the green projects. I see here 5 main reasons. Regulatory and policy uncertainty. And this is related to project viability, investment, private sector interest, innovation. And we have seen it everywhere. The second reason is a poor incentive to do PPP. Many green technology have large upfront R&D cost and long and risk development period, but only generate long-term payback. Are you going to be patient enough to get your return? And the potential for knowledge spillover means investors only earn a fraction of the total rate of return, as benefit also accrue to other companies. The third reason, we have seen a lot of small fragmented markets. Investors are not always confident in recovering and recuperating large, risky, small investment. They want to see serious project put on the marketplace. Another reason, the lack of market data, especially in this region. You talk about PPP, we don't have a lot of data, hard data, to tell us about the risk, the benefit for investment, especially for the smaller startup and new innovation, the one that you're talking about when you want to start. Another reason, unclear investment goals. What I see is that investors in our region struggle to align investment with climate goals. They don't see still eye to eye what's happening, and they're sometimes confused. Related to that, then the question is, what drives decision by investors and financier in the power sector or infrastructure? The average investor that I know asks 3 sets of questions, simple like that. Certainty of cash flow. What are the conditions related to recovery of my costs and investment return? How can an investor enforce payment discipline and off-taker or customer? What kind of government support is provided to secure investors' cash flow? The second question, what are the conditions of the market entry? What are the risks related to licensing, procurement, tendering? What is general legal framework? And the third question that investors ask, clarity of country investment priority. What are those government plans for PPP, electrification, generation, transmission? Which one is what before? What are the technical standards? How are you going to do it? And related to them come the question of risk, that whatever infrastructure in the public-private are always the same. Investor and financier assign the greatest importance to policy and regulatory risk, followed by country risk, and thirdly, wider power sector reform risk. People always mix them up, but this is important. And there are also what I call right now the energy transition risk. And this is related, what kind of business model? Are we really serious about economic shift? Are the society ready to shift to low carbon economy and climate friendly? In this region, we talk a lot, but you saw the emissions are still increasing. So I'm happy to see a lot of renewable energy projects, a lot of intention, but I would like to see more walk of the talk, not talk of the walk. And that's what we have seen happening. So this risk can be policy and regulatory risk, technological risk, market risk, reputational risk, this country versus that country. And this all come in the context of transformation toward low carbon economy. But first of all, you need to have people convinced that's the way to go, whether from the public or private, it doesn't matter, because it's shift toward the new society. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, in my conclusion, I'll answer you, at least my perspective on that, even if I'm not going to be very popular. But, you know, I always ask myself this question: how come for decades we have seen investment go with all those risks, political and country risk and market risk, and to countries at war because there was oil, to countries, you know, with no policy stability whatsoever or no incentives whatsoever, you know, and still go there for gas, for example, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really a question I'm asking myself. It's not a question to you, but one wonders. So I'll just continue now with you, Mr. Ramzi Abdul Said, with the fact that you have said that Jordan, for example, is doing relatively well with penetration of renewables, Lebanon a bit less. You have a lot of experience on the ground. What do you think, how do you think the renewable, the development of renewable projects can be scaled up, basically, whether it's small scales or a small scale or large scale utility?
Well, you see, my perspective of a successful renewable energy project, actually, my description of a renewable energy project is a tribe. Sorry, I have to talk in Arabic. تعرفي الأنظمة الطاقة المستدامة بعتقد عندها ثلاث أعمدة. أولاً إنها تكون proven technology، يعني ما يكون شيء جديد. ولحسن الحظ إنه بآخر 15 سنة أو 20 سنة الطاقات المتجددة وخاصة الشمسية كانت كتير ناجحة، وصار فيها تطور رهيب بالتكنولوجي وبالأداء بالبرفورمانس. والخبرية الجيدة الأخرى وهو البيلر الثاني، الأسعار الماتيريال تبع الرينيوبل انرجي انخفضت بشكل كتير جيد، بشكل انه صارت اتراكتيف ان حتى تتحدى ارخص فصائل فيول احفوري مثلا مثل الغاز. يعني هلا رينيوبل انرجي سولار بلانتس فيها تكون الضاهي والضارب بكتير مجالات الاسعار الطاقه اللي ممكن تولد حتى من ارخصهم اللي هي الغاز. يبقى في بيلر اخير ومهم، هو كما حكي الدكتور صغير، في R&D وانيشال انفستمنت كابكس كبير بده ينحط باي رينيوبل انرجي، وهذا العائق الوحيد او من اكبر العوائق اللي بتخلي القطاع شوي يكون، لانه في ريسك مانجمنت وفي ريسك اسسمنت وفي كثير شغلات، لانه هال IRR او هالادخار رح يجي على مدى طويل، فلازم يكون هالانفستر اوريدي عنده هالبيليف انه هالسيستم رح بالاخير يرد الانفستمنت اللي هي من ورا. اذا اكتملوا هودي الترايبود بصير ناجح السيستم بغض النظر عن السكيل وبغض النظر عن المطلوب. هلا انا شخصيا بما اني هلا عم بمثل القطاع يعني الخاص، لازم يعني اعطي رايي الشخصي، وبعتقد اعطي راي القطاع الخاص كيف لازم، كيف شو احسن شيء يصير، او اذا بدنا نقول مش احسن شيء يصير، ايديلي شو امثل شيء يصير، ومبني على تجارب ناس سبقونا. مثلا انا عندي بالنسبه لي مثلا غرب اوروبا طريقه التعاطي بالطاقه، انا برايي لازم القطاع الطاقه يحرر من الببليك سيكتور. الببليك سيكتور لازم يكون منظم للقطاع وليس محتكر له. لازم القطاع، انا كمان ضد التخصصيه بشكل خاص، يعني ما يتخصص القطاع تيصير فيه مونوبول برايفت بدل ما يكون مونوبول بابليك، بل ينفتح السوق، يتحرر القطاع، اوبن فري اوبن ماركت، مثل ما بيصير باوروبا. انا بعرف بالمانيا قبل بيوم بيجتمعوا الكونسيومرز والسبلايرز وبيتفقوا على اسعار السوق وبيبيعوا. بهيك حاله السوق، قواعد السوق بتشتغل نورمالي، وما بيعود في حدا عم يكون يعني بيصير في ترانسبيرنسي على يعني مطلوبه، وبصير الريسك اوريدي معروف ومحسوب شو هو، وكل حدا الشاطر بيشترطوا، الضعيف بيموت وبيطلع من السوق، والقوي بيضلوا والسوق بيكون ستيبل وبيصير بهالطريقه. اذا فينا نوصل لهالمحل بيكون هذا الشيء جيد. حضرتك قلتي انه stability of legislation، هذا شغله كثير مهمه، long term strategy and taking action، لانه كمان برجع I quote Dr. Saeed, a lot of talk and little work. للاسف بلبنان نفس الشيء، حكينا وحكي وبده يجي ومعتزين، يعني مش انه مثلا عندنا بريفليج انه عايشين بطاقه يعني وبستابيليتي اوف انرجي، كنا بحاجه and very little happened. اما لانه صاحب القرار ما مؤمن بهذا الشيء، حتى لو كان بحب للببليك يقول انه احنا مع الرينيوبل انرجي وما، لكن هو بقرارة نفسه غير مؤمن. اما لانه تتضارب المصالح بانه هو مورد للطاقه، كيف بده يجيب غيره، يعني في هالدايلما. فانا برايي هذا الكونكلوجن لازم يصير. اذا صار يعني هذا بيكون مثالي لكل الدول انها يتحرر السوق، السبلاي والديماند بيعدلوا بعضهم، والقواعد السوق يعني تستقر.
So Germany feed-in tariffs, huh? If they hadn't subsidized the industry, they would never have been a market, right? Okay. But they had for a couple of decades lots of subsidies. No, what I'm saying, you're right, but I'm not sure it's a question of liberalized versus non-liberalized markets. I think it's a commitment from the government that in the case of Germany, the German government to put money into this and to really scale up the industry. But I'm with you. I mean, the commitment of the government has to be there. The stability that the government needs to provide needs to be there. I really don't have much time. I need to, if I have some time, we'll get back to the last question for Mr. Mustafa Suleiman Abdelhadi. We often speak about the difference between regions, the difference between countries, but I think you wanted to tell us a little bit about the difference within Libya between the south and north, and how some of the disparities have been addressed.
أنا أعتقد هذه المشكلة الرئيسية في المجتمعات العربية بصفة عامة، مش بس في ليبيا. أنا من الجنوب، فأنا ابن الجنوب، فأنا عاصرت المشاكل اللي حصلت بعد 2010، وكنت أنا في مناصب وزارية أكثر من، كنت مستشار وزير بيئة، وكنت عضو اللجنة الإدارية الهيئة العامة للبيئة، وكنت ماسك جيف اللي هو مرفق البيئة العالمي، وكنت في عضو رؤية ليبيا 2030. كان في رؤية طموحة لليبيا للمضي قدما في الكاتشب with the rest of the world. لكن اعتقد البرامج هذه مش فقط ليبيا، يعني حتى بعض الدول العربيه ممكن اكسبشنال، يعني مصر ولا المغرب ولا الفروقات بين المناطق او بين الطبقات، هذه مشكله رئيسيه باش تكون في مساواه. طالما ما فيش مساواه وعداله في المنطقه والدوله، من الصعب الدوله تتقدم وتاخذ مسار صح. احنا المشاكل اللي عندنا في ليبيا، معظم الثروات الطبيعيه، النفط والغاز كلها في المناطق الجنوبيه يعني، لكن مساحه صحراويه شاسعه، سكانها ممكن يعني 800 900 ألف، البقيه كلهم في الساحل، بس كل المصادر تنتقل للشمال وتستغل في الشمال يعني. حتى الثوره لما قامت الثوره في 2010 كانت ترى في شعور بالظلم والتهميش، مش بس في الجنوب، حتى مناطق اخرى يعني، لكن مش ما حدثش كان موجوده يعني، واصبحت الكهرباء جزء منها يعني. كل محطات التوليد والتقويه في المناطق الشماليه والجنوب كانت في محطه واحده بعد 10 سنين ستراجل يعني باش انشئت المحطه هذه. انا اعتقد بحل المشاكل هذه يجب الكل يعرف، مش بس الحكومات، حتى الشعب يجب يوصل مرحله يعرف ان طالما ان في ظلم او فيه شريحه واخذ حقها، فبس استحاله راهو تمشي البلاد اللي قدام يعني. هذا ممكن اليوم ضعيف بس بكره يتقوى يعني. خاصه احنا ليبيا الجزء الجنوبي مفتوح على الدول الافريقيه والدول ما فيش حمايه، فبالتالي الانفلكس مش انفلكس سوري، لكن دخول اعداد كبيره من الهجرات الغير شرعيه غيرت في التشكيله الديموغرافيه، وهذه راهو لها اثار سلبيه على الدوله يعني. اعتقد واحده من الاشياء الرئيسيه الكوادر الشباب اللي هم متحررين من التفكير الجهوي والمناطقي، يجب تكون عندهم فرصه انهم يتبووا المناطق هذه، الكوادر اللي هي فنيه اللي قادره تنتج، تعطى فرصه للشباب، لان هم قادرين على قياده المرحله هذه، وهم قادرين ان هم يكونوا فير مع خاصه اختلاطهم مع المجتمعات الاخرى يعني. ايضا اعتقد ان حتى المشاكل اللي صار تدمير والسرقات والبنى التحتيه في الكهرباء، ضروري من وضع ضوابط امنيه رادعه للمخالفين حتى توقف الدمار اللي حاصل. انا من النقطه هذه يعني جدا صراحه نشكر الامم المتحده في دعوتنا هنا. الامم المتحده لها دور كبير، بتستعمل لوائح اللي هي تعطي حقوق منها مثلا لائحه التمييز الايجابي، الاقليات او المناطق اللي هي غير قادره على سكانها او بمواردها ان هي تتساوى مع الاخرين، يجب تعطى له نقطه ايجابيه حتى يتمكن من انه وظيفه النواب يعني، يتمكن من ياخذ حقه زي البقيه، خاصه لما تكون عامه الشعب ما زال ما هوش واصل مرحله من الوعي اللي يعرف ان المساواه جد شيء رئيسي في الدوله. انا لاحظت ان بعد الخضه الاخيره في 2010، بدل ما الشعب يوعى ويشوف ان راهو الطريقه اللي ماشي بها انها كانت خاطئه، اصبحت تكرس فكره المناطقيه والجهويه، وهذا شيء بصراحه ما هوش جيد لليبيا يعني، لان اللي يفترض فيه انه ياخذ الاوبوزيت دايركشن. احنا في الجنوب راهو الكهرباء مش فقط عشان الاضاءه او درجه حراره مرتفعه عشان تكييف، لكن المياه جوفيه، خاصه بعد انشاء النهر الصناعي اخذ كميات كبيره من المياه الجوفيه في الصحراء للشمال. المفروض العكس يعني، الشمال في بحر فممكن في محطه تكرير، لكن في الجنوب ما فيش مياه جوفيه، فبالتالي يجب ان يوقف هذا يعني، لان هذا اخذ كميات كبيره من المياه الجوفيه، فاصبحت مشكله مش فقط في الكهرباء حتى في المياه. هذه قضيه حياه وموت يعني، ما يتوقعش الليبيين انها حتستمر الطريقه هذه فور ايفر. النقطه الاخيره، اعتقد الاشخاص او جديه او القرار السياسي جدا مهم في الحكومه الاخيره. رغم كل المساوئ انا نشوف ان اصبحت الامور اكثر ستيبل، صح في صرف مادي كويس، لكن كان في شخص واحد كان مؤثر. ما استنى احنا عندنا مشكله كهرباء، شخص واحد قد يكون ما هوش واحد تخصص كهرباء، لكن قدر انه يخلي الكهرباء ستيبل اتليست يعني، واصبحت الامور يعني فرق كبير بين 10 سنين. فبالتالي تفعيل القرار السياسي اللي كان فيه موجود قادر انه هو يخلي، لكن الامم المتحده لو نشوف فيها لو دورها مهم تتدخل باش جنوب ليبيا يقدر قادر انه هو يستمر وكاتشب مع ذا ريست اوف ليبيا يعني. شكرا.
Thank you so much for reminding us of the importance of just and inclusive energy transitions, where we talk usually about the energy system, but access to electricity, which is still a huge problem, clean cooking, etc., etc. So I think I'm going to give the floor to the audience now for questions. We have about 15 minutes, so anyone would like to intervene or ask a question to our experts in the panel? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. I would like to hear Professor Jamal and her views on the importance of building a business model surrounding the energy, water, food nexus. I believe that energy transition or energy security, especially for countries with zero fresh water, which is obviously many countries are having issue with the water security. And water security drives us to food security. Now we have energy security should not be discussed away from that, what we refer to as the nexus. Let me focus on the clean energy, water, food nexus. I mean, if I want to be more frank, I would say we will not be able to go for 100% clean energy anyway in the world. There will always be a basket of energy, and fossil fuel will remain as a very essential part of this basket. So I would like to hear comments or views with regard to this very important nexus. Thank you.
And I hope you're wrong, because we're working hard so that we have as little fossil fuels as possible if we don't want to leave a planet where our children won't be able to breathe, basically. But I leave to you the question of the nexus between energy, water, and food, right?
I think the question of going 100% clean energy is an objective. To get to that objective, you need to start at least by putting in place a mixed energy strategy. What's missing in many countries is that mixture of different. A country like Lebanon was basically based on heavy fuel until people decided to move on renewable energy, not governments. Right now, you have around 20% of the energy produced in Lebanon is renewable energy, thanks to the people who decided to go on their own, put renewable energy technologies. Because the government never had a clear strategy about different form of energy. So I think you will see we are going toward the low carbon economy. It's not only about mixing energy, about low carbon economy. And that's an important aspect, because energy and renewable energy is a good business, and a business model that probably will be increasing as we go on. What we have seen right now in the industries, especially in the car industry, in the next 20 years, you will see mainly electric cars. That's very clear. The trend is very clear. Technology is moving, batteries are changing, leapfrogging. So this is what's going to happen. On the other hand, which come back to your first part of the question, many places, many countries still lack access to basic energy. I was director for Africa at the World Bank for many years. And lack of access to energy is a major impediment to economic growth, more than lack of access to water. And that's an important aspect to keep in mind. The energy-related issue to economic growth is more important than other industries. Any increase of 1% of demand will have an impact on the economic growth. And we've seen it from China in the 80s, 90s, when the economic growth of China was going at 12%, demand of energy was going at 7%, and things were of 8% even. And this was going at a very high rate in job creation. So there is an economic aspect to keep it in mind. Access to energy in sub-Saharan Africa will have to become dominated by renewable energy. And that's the big difference. they should not take the mess of developed countries. It's a good opportunity. They have huge hydropower, and renewable energy doesn't mean only, by the way, PV and solar. Hydropower is a source of renewable energy, which is important to take into account. And I think sub-Saharan Africa has a huge potential to use the renewable energy. And in my opinion, you will see more and more in countries, because of the incentive that have been put in place, moving toward that direction. We've seen now, for instance, South Africa moving completely out of coal, thanks to subsidies that the World Bank is giving them to move to renewable energy much more intensively. We've seen countries like Senegal, we've seen the Sahel, and I think this is good news. Egypt has been doing a good job, actually, if you look in terms of renewable energy. And this is the terrain. And the example of the country region that people don't talk about it enough is Morocco, which had a huge power plant, which was supposed to be exporting to Europe. And Morocco is fantastic technology has been developed in terms of the PV. So access to energy related to economic growth is an important aspect for government. From all the government that I have worked all my career with them, in a government, the most important question that always comes to the Minister of Finance is, how much can it cost me the energy? They never talk about water, by the way, with all the respect I have. They never talk about this issue. But cost of energy is important, because if the price increase very high, it will have an impact on the SME, on the business, etc. So I think that's the trend we will see more and more happening. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? No. There is somebody in the back, I think. Two ladies. Wonderful. Here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the very interesting and rich discussions. I was wondering about several things. I think one comment is that the region is really very diverse. And I think that one size doesn't fit all. We heard on the one hand from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. On the other hand, we mentioned some of the challenges in the other countries in the region. I think we need to look at diversified solutions, and keeping in mind the point just raised that energy access is still a challenge that the professor mentioned. In Sudan, for example, 55% of people have access to energy. In Somalia, it's even less. So we're not out of the woods in terms of universal energy access being not an issue in the region. My second point is that the aspect of alignment between public and private sector really needs to be focused, because I think there needs to be great building of trust. And I think the private sector panelists spoke about that a little bit, because private sector cannot follow if the government will change the rules or change the pricing. And fuel subsidies are a very big impediment to the growth of the renewable sector. And this is something that is a big elephant in the room. We need to unpack it. And my last point, this is also a perspective that subnational governments and local governments could become more involved. And I didn't hear so much said about that, so I would be curious to have the reflections of the panelists. And let me just introduce myself. I'm Tehmina Akhtar from UNDP.
Thank you very much for your question. Anybody wants to take this? Yeah. I guess we all agree in 1.5 hours is not much we can, we cannot address all angles. And definitely there is, you have to contextualize any of the solutions that, that renewables can bring, even in terms of pace and scale of the transformation. So I think we can only agree with you. There was one more person in the back, please.
Hi, Maria Bateman. I'm from UNOPS. I wanted to reflect on two things. One is on the need for a more coordinated approach across all the stakeholders. I know you touched upon sort of the challenges in PPP and, partnerships and so on, but we still think that there's a lot of potential in terms of governments, service providers and the private sector coming together in order to institutionalize the necessary policies to enable sustainability and scaling up of renewable energy solutions. it can go to something so simple as integrating them in building codes so that, the initiatives that we carry out in the region that integrate renewable energy solutions don't have to come as ideas from us or the donors or the beneficiaries, but are actually there institutionalized. And the other factor that we have seen is sort of being a driver of the scaling up of solutions is the value that beneficiaries see in use of renewable energy solutions. So partnering with the private sector has proven to be extremely valuable. For example, in our interventions in Yemen, where we partnered with the microfinance institutions and the private sector to provide individuals with renewable energy, with PV systems and pico-solar. And so this has also generated, first of all, it increased the standard of solar products on the market, but it also generated interest from the beneficiaries because they actually saw the use in, utilizing these products. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we seem to speak about renewable energy as if it was one solution. Obviously, I guess the one aspect of it is the distributed nature of renewables makes it, more easily applicable to certain contexts and certain solutions. But obviously, renewables are very different from one source to another and require other, contexts and enabling frameworks, etc. Any other questions from anyone wants to add something to the comments that have been made?
I have a quick comment on the issue of the access. Lebanon has 100% access, but no energy. So you have to be careful on the notion of access. If access is not linked to service, it doesn't mean anything. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in developing countries. Country like Yemen is facing the same problem. So I think the whole issue of access has to be linked to the service you deliver and affordability to what you can pay for it. We haven't talked about affordability, but unfortunately, this is one of the most difficult part of the story. Renewable energy has been price going down until recently. With the Ukrainian crisis, price of PV has been increasing, price of windmill have been increasing. So we're gonna go in inflation in the material, and you will see an impact on access probably going backward instead of going forward.
The price of everything has increased. So relative prices is what we should be looking at, right? So obviously, yeah.
Yeah, however, when the price, the way it will be reflecting on the consumer, it's more, that's what my concern is. When we went to 2 cents per kilowatt, now we're gonna get to 6 cents, there will be, people will go and substitute to go to other old-fashioned, old energy, cheaper one.
Exactly, yeah. Which
we have seen it in Sweden, we have seen it in other places.
Yeah, in many countries. And they continue to be subsidized, that's the problem. This is why fossil fuel subsidies have to absolutely disappear. Go ahead.
I have one final comment. I think the public sector or the monopoly that is now controlling the sector from the public side should consider the power sector not a revenue generator. It should play a conductor role, not an investor role. Most of the countries, including Lebanon, consider the power sector as a revenue generator. This is not supposed to be. The private sector or the investors has to think this way, but from the government point of view, they only have to conduct to make sure that it is stable and it's secure and not a revenue generator. This is their role and they have to stick to it. And this is my perspective of it.
The question, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Niranjan Sarangi at ESQA. I have one question to a clarification maybe. What is the potential of hydrogen, green hydrogen in the region, which is particularly important from the point of view of developed countries looking at the potential of green hydrogen in developing countries for climate finance needs? So if anybody on the panel can highlight, thank you very much.
I have an idea about Lebanon. Most of the big scale hydro has been already utilized, but there is untapped technology in micro hydro, and this has not been yet developed. You know, renewable energy is in, sorry, بالعربي. Should I continue in English? Oh, sorry, I can continue in English. So there is an untapped technology in the micro hydro, especially due to the topography of Lebanon. You know, when we treat renewable energy, we always think about wind or solar. But if we look at solar, the capacity factor of solar or wind is like 30%, 40%. And if this is mapped to hydro, it means that if you can generate during winter time in micro hydro technology, this is an untapped technology, but it is specified for Lebanon because it has a good rainy source and the topography helps. But in other places in the region, I doubt that it works. So this is the Lebanon case.
Let's go ahead. Maybe you can sit on one of the table. We just have really 4 or 5 minutes, so please be succinct.
Mr. Ramzi, thank you for your answer. I think our friend was asking about hydrogen, not hydro. Yes, but my question is also related to hydrogen, so maybe that can give both me and him the answers we're looking for. But I just would like to hear from the panel more on hydrogen as well, especially when we think about hydrogen versus batteries. Hydrogen can be one of the answers to the storage challenge. And the thing is that the capex of hydrogen, for example, is a lot lower than the capex of batteries, but the operation cost is higher. Yeah. Basically, they both
okay.
Both
so please go ahead if you want to answer the question on hydrogen.
No, I have some negative attitude towards hydrogen. To be honest, I don't know. I mean, it is a renewable resource, but eventually the hydrogen comes from a fossil resource. So
there is green hydrogen, from renewable.
Yeah, the green
from
and the blue
renewables.
hydrogen,
So,
I know, but
maybe this question is not really for this session. Maybe we can speak offline on this because we have just a few minutes left. I'm not a huge believer in hydrogen in general, but I can give you the reasons why afterwards. I really would like to, in 30 seconds, if for the Arab region, what do we need for a huge scale up of renewables? So one by one, 30 seconds.
تعاون في الدول العربية في الطاقة النظيفة. الدول اللي هي هايند يجب أن الدول الأخرى تبذل مجهود في الاجتماعات الدولية أو العربية زي هذه لتبادل الخبرات حتى تمكن البقية من اللحاق بالأخرى. القطاع الخاص مش كل دول عربية راهو مهتمة به وعاطية فيه مجال أوسع، لأن زي ما قالت الأخت الإمكانيات المادية متفاوتة بشكل كبير بين الدول العربية.
Okay.
Please.
My point of view is that renewable energy is not a luxury. It is a need. Whether you have oil or not, whether you have resources or not, it is a need and it's not luxury. والكرايسيس اللي صارت بلبنان أكبر بروف على هالشيء.
Two words. Political will.
Yeah, so I can only agree with you. So I'm an economist, but I love history, and so the two combined together make me look at the world. And when I see that in periods of crisis, when political will is there, funds flow, right? So we've seen sort of reconstruction programs a bit everywhere. We have seen financial crisis where money went. We have seen banking bailouts. We have seen suddenly money flowing from conflicts, especially certain conflicts. Same with post-recovery, COVID recovery, etc. So it seems like when money is needed, it flows. So, so in that sense, I'm completely with you. And political will is not just for our region. I think political will is particularly important from the international community. As I said in the beginning, we're still waiting to see the money that was supposed to come many years ago for climate, for SDGs, etc. But I would like to conclude just with one thing, which is I mean, maybe I'm really too old. I've been working in development for so many decades. We're always discussing the same thing. Policy, technology, I mean, in terms of energy, I'm sorry, then policy, technology, finance. And of course, they're important. We need an enabling framework. But I think more than that, we need to talk about the systemic issues that are governing the world economic order, the international exchange, trade. Just to give you one little example, when any developing countries try to do local content requirement, just before COVID, they were taken to court in renewable energy. If India wanted to do local content requirement on solar panels, they were taken to WTO, World Trade Organization, sued. COVID came, everybody needs local content requirement because they suddenly realized that global supply chains are not working out for them. So suddenly we have the Inflation Reduction Act in the US. We have the European Union who has amazing incentives for green industries. This is industrial policy. This is protectionist measures. Suddenly there is no court at WTA in which we can sue these countries. So there's definitely something that we need to think about rather than continuously discussing the same thing and ultimately having the winners of today being the winners of tomorrow. Something systemic has to change. So at the cost of or the expense of maybe not being very popular about that, with that I would like to conclude and really thank you so much for all your expertise and intelligence.